Now here in Romans chapter 1, we are studying the history of Gentile apostasy, the history of the degradation and fall and devolution, not evolution, but the degeneration of the Gentile nations who at one time knew God, rejected Him, ceased to glorify Him, ceased to become thankful, and 3 times in our passage we read God gave them up. The first time God gave them up is found in verse 24, where we read, "Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves." The first apostasy then, after the people believed in evolution, was they were given up to sinful, lusty, worldly, lustful, fleshy appetites, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie and worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. The next step in this apostasy was God gave up their souls. Verse 26 says, "For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections." Now the affections have to do with the soul, the emotions. The body, of course, has to do merely with physical feeling, but the emotional feelings have to do with the affections. Paul, for example, says of the Christian, "They that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts thereof." For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, filthy affections, called inordinate affections in other places, and the Old English word that's used for this is concupiscence or lasciviousness. For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. Notice things that are against nature are even condemned. For example, we're told that nature itself teaches us that a woman has long hair and a man has short hair. Paul says, does not even nature itself teach you that? One of these yippies said to me the other day, he said, well, Jesus Christ had long hair. But that's an outworn, outmoded, archaic cliche if you ever heard of it. Did you ever meet a hippie that lived like Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ quoted the Old Testament every time he opened his mouth. You ever met a hippie who did? Jesus Christ went around healing sick people and raising dead people. Know any hippies that do that? Jesus Christ claimed that if a man came to him, he could find rest, and he couldn't get it any other place. You know of any hippies who could give you rest? Could they give the world rest? Jesus Christ let people worship him. What do you think about those things? You know what the trouble with this bunch of people is? They want to look like something they're not. The people who walk around looking like Jesus Christ are television addicts. You've got a whole world that is hung up now on the theatrical. And what you see in America today is a whole bunch of people parading, trying to be something they're not. They're all trying to look like something they've seen on the screen. Nature teaches you it's a shame for a man to have long hair. And here we read, their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. Even though sin is sin, there are natural sins and unnatural sins. What he is about to describe, of course, is contrary to nature. 27. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, as in the hippies and yippies, men with men, as in the Liberation for the Fruit movement, men with men, as in Kiss-a-Fairy Week. You say, what are you talking about, Brother Ruckman? I'm trying to bring you up to date. That's one of the national weeks one of these groups instituted out in California. Men with men, working that which is unseemly and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. The reference is very plain. Verse 26 is a reference to lesbianism. Verse 27 is a reference to homosexuality. They have slang terms for it. They talk about the gays and the brutes and the fairies and the butches, but it's nothing new to a Bible believer. This business is all old and out of date. The Bible clearly gives all the sins, catalogs them, numbers them, names them. You know nothing that a Bible believer doesn't know, because what you know has already been written about. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another. This sin is called sodomy in the Old Testament. And to this day, the word appears on the police blotter downtown as sodomy, named after Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot was accosted and attacked by the men of Sodom. And of course, these two sins go on in America regularly, perennially, everywhere, and mainly in Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago, and other, what do they call them, ideal cities, model cities. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burning their lust one toward another. Men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense, the payback. See it? Recompenny, the pence paid back, that recompense of their error which was meet. The Bible says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And you'll receive back the recompense that you have coming. You'll reap what you sow. A nation that sows liquor will reap drunkards. A nation that sows Hollywood will reap sex perversion. A nation that sows sin and adultery will reap divorces. And a nation that sows infidelity will reap revolution and destruction. You can't miss. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. Notice the RSV has changed the verse again to, they did not like to acknowledge God. But that isn't the sin that's mentioned. It isn't merely that God deals in wrath against those that refuse to acknowledge Him. He deals in wrath with those who don't like to keep Him in their knowledge. If that were the effort of Einstein in his theory of relativity and in his new definition of meaning, which is a horse laugh if you can get a hold of it, in these definitions and scientific theories, the human mind has attempted to not merely shove God out of the universe and out of the creation, but out of human consciousness. Einstein and some of the logical positivists at the Congress of Vienna in Austria the last 2 years are telling us that no word has any meaning unless it can be demonstrated, and that a thing to be meaningful, I believe that's the dead orthodox 20th century cliche, must be demonstrated, otherwise it has no meaning. But of course this is meaningless in itself. You cannot demonstrate many things. For example, you can't demonstrate that definition of meaning that I just gave. Therefore, it's meaningless. The attempt of the modern evolutionists has not merely been to get God out of creation. The attempt has been to get God out of the mind of the student, so the student is not even bothered with thinking about God. Hence the remarkable statement by Thomas Althusser, 100 years too late, God is dead. Now, Friedrich Nietzsche in 1880 was way ahead of Thomas, and Nietzsche was always running around saying God is dead until he died, and then somebody wrote on a wall, Nietzsche is dead, and signed it God. Obviously a practical joke of a fabulous sort. But these men that say God is dead, what they mean is this. They mean the concept of God is no more valid for modern man because modern man can't use the concept. Therefore, since it's not useful, that's the pragmatism of John Dewey and Russell, therefore God no longer exists. This is as much as saying, if I can't use a thing, it isn't there. And of course, what this means in just over-the-shop language is, 3/4 of the intelligentsia in America are insane. A man that adopts the reasoning that if a thing is not useful, it isn't there, is a crazy man. I am sure many of you have no use for rattlesnakes, but if you think they're not there, you're in for a trip to the doctor. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, and there He abandoned the Spirit to do those things which are not convenient. And then follows quite a list. And don't think you're a Christian just because you haven't hit bottom. We're getting ready now to call the church roll. And as a man sat out in the country in a small church, he said, we had a man come in there one time to preach Romans chapter 1, and when he got through, some of the people said, we're not that bad, but he never even gave them a chance to justify themselves. The next night, he not only suggested they were bad, he proved it from the list. Here is the list. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity or malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. Sound like a morning newspaper, doesn't it? Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Now that's the list. Did you notice in the list that boasting, pride, and disobedience is in the same list with fornication and murder? Did you notice that debate and deceit and breaking covenants is in the same list with murder, backbiting, haters of God? My, what a list. What a list. It's like a man said to a lady one time back in the 19th century, do you believe in total depravity? And she said, oh yes, and wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if we all lived up to it? Of course, she didn't get the thing quite right, but what you're reading there is the depraved condition of mankind. One time a Hindu in the bank of the Ganges River was shown a microscopic smear of the water of the Ganges River. He nearly had a heart attack. He'd worshipped the river and bathed in the water and drunk the water. And when he saw it under a microscope, he couldn't imagine what those things were doing in that holy water. And so it is with the human heart. We think we're good because we don't read the Bible. We think we're as good as other people because we don't expose ourselves to the Word. But once you put yourself under the microscope of Romans chapter 1, you'll tend to shut your mouth and keep it shut for a long time. The book says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And if you're not guilty of fornication or murder, there's one thing for certain, you're guilty of pride or boasting, and if you pass there, you can't pass on without understanding. And if you can pass there, you've whispered something, and if you pass there, you've wanted something you don't have. And Paul says in Colossians, covetousness is idolatry. John says, little children, keep yourself from idols. Then this is the hate literature masterpiece of the ages. This is the great negative blast, the great anti-people, anti-human book. This is the great book that stands up and condemns the total sum race of mankind in one sweeping slap and says the nations in Isaiah 40 are like the drop of the bucket and counted as less than nothing in his sight. And when Mao Tse said that his God was the Chinese people, he was talking like a typical two-legged jackass. And when Karl Marx and Engels and the rest of them said that the thing to do is make this earth a better place to live in, and when Martin Luther King Jr. and Abernathy and Rap Brown began to sing, you can change the world, we can change the world, they were talking like demented idiots. The Bible gives a photograph of the human heart, and you cannot change the nation till you change the family. You can't change the family till you change the people in the family. You can't change the people in the family till you change human nature. And you can't change human nature until you're dead. Now, you can be born again. You can have a new nature. But not even the new nature will solve all the problems of human nature. And here before us, human nature is given. That's why the world's against the book. That's why the book is against the world. As a man said, the reason why you don't like that book is because it knows all about you and tells it. Professor Pinkovich, the head of the USSR Department of Education from 1930 to 1950, said, communications and transportation have made this world too small for that book. Either this world will have to go or that book will have to go. I have a message for Brother Pinkovich. The world will have to go. Christ said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not. And, brother, when the heavens and earth, first, second, and third heaven, and the nebulous star clusters, galaxies, and constellations explode with a blast of the archangel's trumpet and vanish in the fiery inferno of a dying universe, thy word, O Lord, forever is settled in heaven. So this is the list, and a negative list it is, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whispers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters. Did you ever see some of the things Cassius Clay said? Proud, inventors of evil things. Did you ever read the Seekers material? Disobedient to parents. Did you ever read the police blotter down at the juvenile court? Without understanding. Did you ever quiz college graduates on their knowledge of the Bible? Without understanding. Covenant breakers. Say till death do us part, and then desert and sue for divorce. Covenant breakers. Without natural affection. They make love into lust or possession. Without natural affection. Every day in the newspaper, some child murders a mother or father. And these murders of fathers and murders of mothers are mentioned in 1 Timothy 1 in a 1611 King James authorized version. Every day mothers desert their babies. Mothers who don't love their children. Their love for their children is possessive, but not real. There has been many a mother. When I say many, I mean many, not some. There has been many a mother who has taken a child when it was less than a month old and wrapped it in paper or a blanket and put it in a garbage can. We had here in Pensacola several years ago a case where a 4-month-old baby was left in a bed 4 days and 3 nights with no attention. They picked up the parents drunk down at one of the drinking places in town where they'd been on a 4-day drunk, and that little 4-month-old baby was lying in that bed with his body bloated, the milk clabbered, lying in its own filth with flies all over the bed. And when the woman was brought before the judge, she wept and said, "Please don't take my baby. Please don't take my baby." Without natural affection. No woman in the world with natural affection would go on a 4-day drunk when she had a 4-month-old baby. That isn't natural. Who, knowing the judgment of God, and they knew it, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but birds of a feather flock together, they have pleasure in them to do them. They all hang out with the same crowd. The reason why there are thousands of young people in America who think they're good when they aren't worth the powder and shot it take to blow them to hell is because of the gang they hang out with. The first thing you do is get away from home, get in the car, get out from under parental authority, and hang out with a crowd like themselves. They all pat each other in the back. They all slap each other in the back. They all brag about each other. They bloat each other. They puff each other. They compliment each other. And the first thing you know, they're all living in a dream world where they think they're something they're not. They have pleasure in them that do them. And then Paul lands with both feet. Chapter 2, verse 1, "Therefore thou art inexcusable." No excuse. Romans chapter 1, verse 20 said, "They are without excuse." No excuse. No excuse. A little later, Paul says in chapter 3, he says, "Every mouth will be stopped and the whole world become guilty before God. Therefore thou art inexcusable." No excuse. Old man. Notice how the verse is not aimed at the Christian, but any man, old man, any man, whosoever, you see. 2 verse 1, whosoever, any man, not just Romans. Old man, whosoever thou art that judgest. For where thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself, for thou that judgest doest the same things. And of course that's aimed at an unsaved man. Isn't it strange how these liberals keep quoting, "Judge not lest ye be judged," of the Christian, when the Christian is preaching the truth? When a Christian tries to win a man to Christ and tells the man that outside of Christ is going to hell, the liberal always says, "Judge not lest ye be judged." But isn't that a strange thing? Why, Paul says of the Christian in 1 Corinthians, "He that is spiritual judges all things." Yet he himself is judge of no man. Paul says in Corinthians, we have the mind of Christ. When we tell a man he's going to hell, we're not judging him. We're telling him what's going to happen to him because God has already judged him. The Bible said, "He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not the Son of God shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him. He that believeth not is condemned already, John 3:36, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. We don't judge anybody. They're already judged. We're telling the man about the sentence. We don't pass sentence. I don't tell any man I've consign him to hell. I wouldn't consign a man to hell if I had the opportunity. But if you're unsaved, you're consigned. I didn't do it. Don't get mad at me. But you see, the people who do the judging are unsaved people. O man, whosoever thou art that judgest, for when thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself, for thou that judgest doeth the same things. When an unsaved man says, you see that hypocrite in the church, do you know what he's done? He's cut his own throat. Tell me something, Buster Brown. If you're so sharp at knowing the faults of Christians, you must know the difference between right and wrong. But how do you imagine you're going to get by the judgment talking about the heathen that don't know? When you know. As soon as you've drawn a judgment on a man, you've shown you have the ability to judge. Once you've done that, you show that in your conscience and heart, you know right and wrong. You condemn yourself. You're without excuse. You have no excuse. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Chapter 2, verse 2. But we are sure. We don't hope, we don't guess, we don't think. We're very dogmatic about it. We're very intolerant, bigoted, narrow-minded about it. We know exactly what we're talking about. We are sure. We are, now maybe you're not, we are sure that the judgment of God is according to truth against them which commit such things. I've talked to Christians who had beer in the icebox, and they talked about the hypocrites in the church that played cards. I've talked to Christians that played cards, they talked about the hypocrites that smoked. I've talked to Christians that smoked, they talked about the hypocrites that went to ball games. I've talked to the Christians who went to ball games, they talked about the hypocrites that went to movies. I've talked to Christians who went to movies, they talk about the hypocrites that believe in mixed bathing. A woman came to Jim Mercer one time with a big dip of tuberose in her mouth, that's snuff. And she said, preacher, she said, what does that verse mean, that Bible that says, with that big wad of snuff in her lip? She said, what does that verse scripture mean that says, whenever not of faith is sin? What does that mean? And he looked her right smack in the eyeballs and said, well, what do you think it means? And she said, well, if it don't mean going to the ball game on Sunday, I don't know what it do mean. And then spit into a can. That's human nature. If you live wrong, the world will call you a hypocrite, and if you live right, they'll call you a fanatic. So settle it in your heart. If you're a child of God, settle it, and settle it once and for all. If you're going to go all out for God, you're going to be a fanatic and a crackpot and a nut and a weirdo and crazy. And if you're not going to live for God, they're going to call you a hypocrite. So just make up your mind and jump one way or jump the other. We are sure the judgment of God is according to truth against them which commit such things. And thinkest thou this, O man, any man, that judgest them which do such things and doest the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of God? No, you certainly won't. You certainly won't. He's appealing to you. Don't you see it? What you need is mercy, not judgment. Don't you get it? It's not that you can hide behind the list and find some place where you don't fit and get by. It's like the photographer said to the lady when he took her picture, lady, you don't need justice, you need mercy. At the Shelby County Courthouse in Memphis, there are 6 statues 12 feet high around the Shelby County Courthouse. One of them is wisdom with head bowed. One of them is justice, blind. One of them is muscular authority. One is liberty, saluting peace. And peace has the hand over the heart. Peace has a harp in its hand. Prosperity has water and fruit. But of those 6 statues around the Shelby County Courthouse, there's one notable statue that is missing. There is no mercy at the Shelby County Courthouse in Memphis, Tennessee. There are 6 statues, wisdom, justice, authority, liberty, peace, and prosperity, but no mercy. And if you want mercy, you'll have to come to God for it. And your prayer had better be, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Not give me liberty or give me death or give me justice. You don't need justice, believe me. I know your case better than you do. What you need is mercy. If the book of Romans has your picture photographed like the master photographer intended to take it. On our next volume, volume 3 of our study, we'll take up our commentary in Romans chapter 2, verse 4.